Good day to you, Trika. Today I'm going to do a revision, a full paper revision on management, communication, and for a full paper revision on management, communication, and for. So I'm going to question one. I'm going by revising question one. Question one, right? 1.1. Right. Define the term communication. Right. So communication is defined as a two-way process. So is a two-way process. Is a two-way process where a sender sends a message, where a sender sends a message it's a two-way process where a sender, who is the encoder, sends a message, which is information, through a medium, or we can call it a channel, through a medium, we can say a channel, to the receiver, who decodes, and respond by giving a feedback. By giving a feedback. By giving a feedback. Right. So don't forget to include elements of communication. Do not forget to include elements of communication like sender, encoder, message, medium, channel, receiver, decoder, and feedback in your definition, right? So you only get 5 marks if you include elements of communication. You can also mention that barriers may be present in the process. Remember, noise. You can also mention barriers, communication barriers. Barriers are present in the process. They are present in the process. Right. Let's go to question point 1.2. Right, question 1.2. Listening is a useful skill when dealing with customers. So let's go to question 1.23. Explain critical, analytical listening. Right, we want to explain what is critical listening. Right. We are on 1.21. Critical listening. Critical listening, or we can call it analytical listening, right? So critical listening, it is when one listens to determine the aim of the message, right? You determine the aim of the message, you analyze the message, right? You ask for repeat if not clear, And also, you don't accept everything that you hear, right? Critical, right? Whereby you determine aim. You determine aim. What is the aim or a purpose of the message? Of a message? You ask the speaker to repeat or repeat. Ask for repeat. If the message, or repeat if the message is unclear. Right. So critical listening is when you listen to the main aim of the message. You listen to the main aim of the message. Right. Let's move on to 1.22. Appreciative listening. 1.22. 1.22. Right. Appreciative listening. Appreciative listening. Appreciative listening. Appreciative listening. It is when one listen first. Appreciative listening. It is when one listen first. Appreciative listening. It is when one listen first and reacts after the speaker's message. When you listen first, listening first, then respond or react. React by asking questions. That's what we call appreciative listening. Right. Let's go to 1.23. 1.23, right? Which is attentive listening, whereby you listen to identify the main points, right? You listen to identify the main points of the speaker's message. You listen to identify the main point of the speaker's message. You listen to identify the main points of the speaker's message. That's what you call attentive listening. Attentive listening. Right. So let's move on to question 1.3. Question 1.3. Question 1.3. Right. It reads, how can one improve listening skills? Name 3 points. So here you are supposed to give 3 points. 1.3. 1.3. Right. What is the importance? How to improve listening skills? Right. One has to let the speaker speak first. Right. Listen and then react. One has to listen and then react. Listen and then react. You have to do not interrupt the speaker. And also one has to make notes to summarize the speaker's message. One has to make notes to summarize the speaker's message. Right. And also one has to avoid distractions. One has to avoid distractions. Anything that would disturb you from listening need to be avoided. One has to make an eye contact. One has to make an eye contact. right? So that you will be able to concentrate. You will be able to concentrate. One is to make an eye contact so that you can be able to concentrate, right? And also, you're supposed to make filler sounds to show that you are genuinely interested, right, to the speaker's message. Make filler sounds, right? Sounds like right? Those are what you call filler sounds, right? So that's how one can improve listening skill. One is to listen first and react. Supposed to make notes to summarize the speaker's message. Must avoid distractions. Must also keep an eye contact and also make filler sounds. Right here, you are supposed to get 3 marks. Right, at least three of these. Three of these. Right. Let's go to 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. Indicate whether the following statements are true or false by writing only the true or false next to the question number. Right. Let's go to 4.1. 1.41. 1.41. 1.41. 1.41. 1.41. Right. Right. 1.41 reads verbal and non-verbal communication must support, not contradict each other. That's true. That's true. Remember, verbal communication, so non-verbal communication supplements verbal communication. Non-verbal communication supplements verbal communication. So the answer is true. The answer is true. The answer is true. Right. Let's move on to question 1.42. 1.42, right. 1.42 reads, most of the information we convey each day is in non-verbal, right. That's also true. We normally use non-verbal communication mostly during the day than verbal communication. That's true, right? Let's go to question 1.43. 1.43, right? It reads, communication is science, right? Yes, it's true. Communication is science. Science that needs to be learned and understood for it to be specific, to be effective, supposed to be learned for it to be effective, right? So let's move on to 1.44. 1.44. 1.44. A customer complaint on social media is considered direct communication. That's false. That's false, right? Remember, direct communication is when communication is directed to a specific person, directly to a specific person, right? So when it is the customer is directing his control his complaint on social media, it means it's indirect communication. Indirect communication, right? So let's move on to question 1.4. Question 1.4. 1.45. 1.45, right? 1.45 reads, face-to-face oral communication is considered the most effective means of communication. That's true. That's true. It's effective because one will be able to take note of non-verbal expressions. So you can be able to identify communication breakdown or ineffectiveness by looking at the what? At the receiver. So it becomes very effective. It becomes very effective, right? Let's move on to question 1.5. 1.5. question 1.5. Let's move on to question 1.5, right? So let's go to 1.51. 1.51, right? Let's read question 1.51. Describe how the following factors of communication could negatively affect your communication with colleagues and friends. Personality, right? Personality, how does it affect your relationship with your colleagues, right? So let's discuss an introvert personality. Introvert personality, introvert, introvert personality, an introvert personality, an introvert personality, right? How does it influence your relationship with your colleagues? Introvert. So an introvert person is someone who is shy. He's shy and also is reserved, right? So you can find that an introvert does not want to socialize, does not want to socialize, or does not like socializing. So meaning to say, you'll be having few friends, you'll be having few friends, right, at work. An introvert will be having few friends at work, right? So this also might affect his participation, right, in meetings, right? It affects participations, his participation. He cannot participate because he's an introvert, he's a shy person. It affects his participation in meetings. Those kind of people who will not say anything in meetings, even if they have something to say, because of their personality, it will be very difficult for them to what? To 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 discuss, to be involved in a discussion. Let's go to number 1.52. 1.52. Frame of reference. Frame of reference. Right. Right. So you can find that getting along with people of different backgrounds in the workplace, right? That's right. So different cultures, right, may cause communication problems, right? Getting along, getting along with people from different backgrounds, from different backgrounds, right? Might also cause communication background breakdown, right? It might also cause communication to break down, right? So, right, this may cause communication breakdown or ineffectiveness, right? You can find that at work there are different backgrounds, people with different backgrounds, meaning difference in culture, differences in what? In academic status, etc. Right? Some they are learned, some they are not. Right. Let's go to 1.53. 1.53. 1.53. Right. Reasoning. Reasoning. Right. Reasoning is the ability to think, right, to understand it and to arrive to a conclusion, right, through a logical process, right? That's reasoning. That ability for one to think and also to understand and to arrive to a conclusion. That's reasoning. That's reasoning. The ability, the ability to think, understand, and make conclusions. Right. That ability through a logical process. Through a logical process. Through a logical process. Through a logical process. Right. Will make people to notice and remember you. Will make people to notice and remember you. Will make people to notice you, to notice and remember you. Right. So the way you think, your ability to think, your ability to understand, your ability to make conclusions will make people notice you or remember you. Right. So let's move on to question 1.6. 1.6. Question 1.6. Question 1.6 is saying provide a one word or a phrase for each of the following description. 1.61 non-verbal communication using distance or space. That's what you call what? It's called what? 1.6. 1.6. 1.6. 1.61. Right. So the study of distance, we call it proxemics. Proxemics. Or you can call it a zone, zones. Zones, the study of distance. It's called what? Proxemics or zones. Proxemics or zones. Right. Proxemics or zones. Right. Proxemics or zones. Right. So let's go to question 1.62. 1.62. Communication using touch. Communication using touch is called tesesics. 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 Right. Communication using touch is called tesesics. 1.62. We call it tesesics. That's the study of touch, which is the study of touch. Communication using touch. Right? When you communicate using touch, examples includes you can hug someone as a way of what? Comforting the person. Right? Placing your hand on someone's shoulders to just to make him pay attention. Place your hand on someone's shoulders just for attention. Just for attention. Right. Right. So let's move on to the next question, which is 1.63. Communication depending on the receiver's ability to see. That's what you call a visual semiology. That's what you call a visual semiology. Anything that needs to be seen to be understood. Communication with anything that needs to be seen to be understood. We call it visual semiology. Right. Let's move on to question 1.64. The sender prepares the information to send to the receiver. The sender prepares information to send to the receiver. That's what you call encoding. Encoding, which is a process of formulating thoughts into a message using a code. A process of formulating thoughts into a message, right? Using a code that the receiver can understood. That's what you call encoding. Encoding, right? Let's move on to question 1.65. 1.65. The pitch, tone, and tempo of one's voice is equally important in oral communication. This one is what you call paralinguistics. Paralinguistics, which is the study of voice. Which is the study of voice. Paralinguistics. Paralinguistics. Paralinguistics, which is the study of voice. The study of the voice. When we're talking about the voice, we're talking about the tone, the rhythm, the tempo, the speed of the voice, right? So let's go to question 2. Question 2. So before we go to question 2, let's go to question 1.7. 1.7. Provide a deeper practical example of the following, right? 1.71, right? We are going to give a practical example of mass communication, right? It might be SABC TV, SABC TV broadcasting, might be broadcasting the news. That's broadcasting the news. SABC 2 or SABC TV broadcasting the news. Broadcasting the 8 p.m. news. That's mass communication. That's mass communication. Communication is sent to a large group of audience. Communication is sent to a large group of audience, right? Right. So let's go to 1.72. 1.72. 1.72, interpersonal communication, right? Interpersonal communication, right? So we're going to give an example. The HRR, the human resource manager, giving training instructions to the marketing manager. The HR manager is giving training instructions to the marketing manager. That's interpersonal. It's between two or more people or a few people, right? That's mass interpersonal communication. Sorry, that's interpersonal communication, right? So let's go to question 2. To question 2. Question 2. Question 2. Question 2. Question 2. Right. So let's try to answer questions on question 2. Right, so we are going to read the scenario. The modern workplace has changed forever. At the start of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, workplace culture changed dramatically as hybrid and remote work were put in place. Studies show that this shift has taken a toll on the mental health and well-being of workers. Consequently, many have suffered from the social isolation. Today, in some industries, remote and hybrid workplace are there to stay. During the pandemic, organizations have responded to a new digital online environment. Everywhere, workers have had to adopt new skills. Many others have resigned and taken risk by pursuing what they truly love. Right. So let's go to 2.1. 2.1. Define the term self-image or self-esteem. 2.1. We want to define what is self-esteem. 2.1. 2.1. So self-esteem, it is the way someone sees himself or evaluation of oneself. An evaluation of oneself. That's what you call a self-esteem, a self-image, evaluation of oneself, right? That's what you call self-image, right? Let's go to question 2.2. Explain the psychological dimension of the self-image, psychological dimension, right? So this is an evaluation of one's personality. It's an evaluation of one's personality. It's an evaluation of one's personality. An evaluation of one's personality, right? Whether a person is an introvert, who is someone who is shy, quiet person, or an extrovert, which is an opposite of an introvert, someone who is outgoing, who is outgoing and energetic, outgoing or energetic, right? That's what you call psychological dimension. So the combination of these people might affect communication at the workplace. The combination of these might affect communication style within an organization, right? Let's go to 2.3. How do you think remote work may negatively affect teamwork and social cohesion at the workplace, right? How does it affect the remote work may negatively affect, how does it affect social and teamwork at the workplace, right? So you can find that the colleagues are no longer working face-to-face, right? Colleagues are no longer working face-to-face, right? Which is probably the most effective communication, right? Colleagues no longer work face-to-face, like what they were doing before COVID. They no longer work face-to-face, right? And as a team, so communication suffers. Since face-to-face is the most effective communication, right? So you can find that body language cannot be read since they are not seeing each other. Cannot be read. Right. And also we can find that there is no bonding. There is no bonding since employees are no longer working together. Right. Let's go to 2.4. 2.4. 2.4. Let's go to 2.4. Demand for specific skills demand for specific skills have grown globally. Explain the skills dimension of self-image. Skills dimension of self-image. So dimension of skill, it is when one is skillful technically. It is an evaluation of how skillful you are. You are technically or socially. Right? How skillful you are technically or socially. That's what you call dimension of skill. Right? So whether you are good at typing or you are good at getting along with others. Right? So technical dimension. Technical. Sometimes you are good at driving or typing. Typing or driving. That's technical. Okay? That's technical. And then socially, maybe you are very good at getting along with others. Getting along with others. Or with a variety of people, many people. If you are getting along, you find it easy to get along with many people. It means that you have a social skill. Right. Let's move on to question 2.5. Question 2.5. Question 2.5. How would you improve your self-image during times of uncertainty? List 8 points. Right. Right. So we're going to talk about ways to improve what? Self-image. Ways to improve self-image. Ways to improve self-image. 2.5. Right. 2.5. Question 2.5. Right. So how one can improve his self-image. One has to know his strength and weaknesses. Should know your strength and weaknesses. Should know your strength and weaknesses. Right. You should know what are you good at. 2, you are supposed not to say bad things about yourself. Do not say bad things. Do not say bad things. Bad things about yourself. And also, one has to control his thoughts. One has to control his feelings. One should not tolerate situations or environment that makes them worthless. that make you worthless. Right. And also, one has to decide to be happy. Decide to be happy. One has to decide to be happy regardless of situations. And also, one has to one has to take pride in his achievements. Pat yourself on the back. Pat yourself on the back. On the back. If you achieve something. If you achieve something. Right? Pat yourself. Congratulate yourself. Right. One has to set realistic goals. One has to set realistic goals. The goals that are reachable. Right? One has to set realistic goals. And also one has to be positive. Be positive. Be positive. Right? One has to be positive. Right? So let's move on to question 1.6, 2.6. 2.6. How could one improve worker motivation and productivity in the workplace according to Maslow? So we are going to discuss the following. 2.61, physiological needs. Physiological needs, right? Physiological needs, right? 2.61. How can one improve by providing physiological needs, right? So you can find that workers, they need food. So by providing lunch subsidies, they need food. And also they need to rest. They need a break by providing breaks during working hours, right? By providing breaks during working hours, right? Let's go to 2.62. 2.62, safety and security needs. Safety and security needs. Safety and security needs. Right. How would you motivate employees by providing safety and security needs? So you can find that workers, they need to feel, they need to feel, need to feel secured, right? Workers, they need to feel secured. Workers need to feel secured. They should not be afraid that one day they will be chased away from work. Right? So how can the organization provide this need? By providing permanent contracts. Permanent contracts. Permanent contracts by making them sign permanent position or contracts. Contracts. They feel secured, right, at work. Right. Right. So let's move on to question 2.62, 2.63, right? Self-esteem needs. We are still on how can one improve employees' motivation, right? 2.13, how can one improve employees' motivation by providing self-esteem needs or self-respect, right? So workers normally they need to be given regular feedback on performance, right? They want to hear everybody's opinions, the rewards, they can be provided with rewards, administer rewards, You're supposed also to promote them, promotion, and also recognition. Recognition, they need to be recognized. They need to be recognized for work done, for well done, is it? They need to be recognized for work well done. Right. So let's go to 2.64. Right. Self-actualization need. Self-actualization need. Self-actualization need. Right. By allowing them to further their studies, further education, their education. If one really wants to go to school or to further his organization, his qualifications, his education, the management has to provide bursaries, right, to so that the employee can pursue his interest, right? And then 2.65, 2.65. Sorry. There's, let's move on to 2.7. 2.7. All right. Choose the correct word from the bracket. Choose the correct word from the bracket, right? And write it next to the question number, right? So 2.71, 2.71, 2.71, right? 2.71 reads, colleagues are considered a dash reference group. So colleagues are considered to be a primary reference group. Primary reference group because they have direct contact with the manager or the fellow colleagues. They have a direct contact with with each other, right? And then 2.72, 2.72. Explain your answer, right? These people, these are the people that have direct contact with. These are the people with whom you have direct contact with. Right. Right. So let's move on to question 3. Question 3. Question 3. Question 3. Question 3. Right. Right. It's all about interviewing. Right. So let's read the question 3. Complete the following definition for interview. Right. An interview, as we're saying, they're supposed to complete. So an interview is a formal, pre-planned oral conversation or interaction between two people. Right. It is a pre-planned oral conversation between two people, which are the interviewer and interviewee, right? Or it can be a panel, right? Um, right. So it involves it involves uh, gaining, exchanging, of information of a specific subject. Of a specific subject. And it can be within a specific time. A specific time. Right? So an interview is a free, planned, formal, oral conversation between two people, right? Or a panel. It involves gaining and exchanging of information of a specific subject within a specific time, right? That's an interview. That's an interview, right? That's an interview, right? Let's move on to 3.2. Compile a list of 3 question types which you may expect in an interview. Provide an example of each question type by writing the answer next to the question number. Right? Here you're supposed to compile types of questions and we give an example. Right? You have to compile types of questions and we give an example. 3.2, right? The first type we're gonna write open-ended question. Open-ended question, right? So open-ended question is whereby the candidate or the applicant has to give a detailed summary, right? Give an explanation, right? For example, questions will be, tell us about yourself. Tell us about yourself. About yourself. Tell us about yourself. Right? So it needs an applicant to give a detailed explanation. That's what you call an open-ended question. An open-ended question, right? And then you also have what you call a closed-ended question. A closed-ended question, right? Here it requires you to give a yes or a no answer. A yes or a no answer, right? For example, questions like, do you have a driver's license? Do you have a driver's license? Do you have a driver's license? One will say yes or a driver's license. One will say yes or no. Yes or no, right? And then we also have what we call a specific question. Specific question, whereby an applicant has to give a specific answer. An applicant has to give a specific answer, right? Right. For example, how old are you? How old are you? One has to say 40, right? Depending on his age, right? It requires a specific answer, right? We also have what we call a reflective question. A reflective question. A reflective question. A reflective question. This one, it is a question that has been rephrased from your previous statement. For example, they say, you said you are good at socializing. or you are good at socializing. Okay, for example, how does this benefit or benefits the organization? How does it benefit the organization? Right, reflective questions. Right. So let's move on to question 3.3. Discuss 4 things you should remember during an interview. During, take note. You are supposed to take note during an interview. Things that you are supposed to remember during the interview. Right. During an interview, which is question 3.3. 3.3. Things that you're supposed to remember during the interview. One is to make sure that he remembers to keep an eye contact. You need to keep an eye contact. Right. One has to make sure that he should not chew a bubble gum. Right. Do not chew a bubble gum. It's not acceptable. Right. One has to remember that he has to listen when answering questions. He needs to listen carefully. You need to listen carefully when answering questions. You need to listen carefully so that you don't end up answering the wrong questions. You need to listen carefully. One has to remember that he's supposed to think before answering. He has to think before answering. Think before you answer. Think before you answer. He has to remember that he has to think before answering. And also, one has to remember to also ask questions, right? You're supposed to remember that you can also ask questions, right? Remember, you need to remember to also ask questions. Yes, to remember to also ask questions. And lastly, one has to be alert. Has to be alert. You're supposed to be alert. You're supposed to bend close to answer. Right. Alert. Need to be alert. Right. So here we were supposed to give how many points to remember? 4 points to remember. Right. That means that you're supposed to at least 4 points. 4 points. You're supposed to at least write 4 points. Let's go to question 4, which is mass media communication. Question 4, mass media communication. Right? How the information age has become the disinformation age. Right? I'm going to read the scenario. The rise of fake and misleading news is deeply concerning. America Senator Dodd said in a statement, even more concerning is the lack of education provided to ensure people can distinguish what is fact and what's not. Right. So let's go to 4.1. 4.1. What is manipulative reporting? What is manipulative reporting? Right. We are on question 4.1. Right. Question 4. Right. So we are going to give a definition for manipulative reporting, right? So manipulative reporting is a deliberate attempt, right? Or it is a process of a selective or a biased news, right? To give maybe a positive or a negative impression. All right. It is a deliberate attempt by an organization to give a favorable impression. All right. So manipulative reporting is selective. All right. Is selective or biased, uh, reporting, right? Whereby it is written when the news is written in a way to give a negative or a positive impression. Manipulative reporting, right, which is selective or biased reporting when the news is written, right, is written in a way to give a negative or a positive impression, right? So let's move on to question 4.2. 4.2. Name 3 techniques used in manipulative reporting. Techniques used in manipulative reporting, right? They use what you call, they report out of context, right? They report out of context. They report out of context. They report out of context. 4.2. Report out of context. Out of context. You can also use incorrect, misleading, statistics. Misleading statistics. But they can also select effects, selection of facts, right? They can also use vague statements, to manipulate the audience. And also, they also use emotional language, use of emotional language. You can use emotional language, right? So let's move on to question 4.3. We suffer from overexposure to the mass media. Suggest 4 ways we could avoid media manipulation. Ways to avoid media manipulation. Ways to avoid media manipulation, right? Ways to avoid media manipulation, right? We are on 4.3. Ways to avoid media manipulation. So how to avoid media manipulation? 1, One has to watch more than one news. One has to watch more than one so that he can compare information. One has to watch more than one news. Two, right? Before you spread the news or information, make sure that it is true before you spread information. Right? Make sure it's true. Three, spend less time on social media. Spend less time on social media. One is to spend less time on social media or social platforms, right? And also by engaging people, by engaging people, and share different perceptions can be able to eliminate manipulative reporting. Different perspectives. That you can be able to get rid of manipulative reporting. Right. Okay, let's move on to another question, which is question 5. Question 5. Right. Question 5. Let's go to question 5. Right. Question 5. Right. Meeting procedures. Right. So let's go to question 5.1. Right. Meeting procedures. Effective meetings don't just happen. A good meeting culture requires a good chairperson and the right people present at the meeting. Right, I'm going to read again. Effective meetings don't just happen. A good meeting culture requires a good chairperson and the right people present at the meeting. Right. The question, what are the 5 duties of a chairperson? Right. So a chairperson is the one who he presides the meeting. Is the one who chairs the meeting. Right. He also announces voting results. He announces voting results. And he also has to answer all point of orders. He answers on point of order. Right. The chairperson also signs the minutes of the meeting after they are compiled by the receptionist. He signs the minutes of the meeting. Right. And also, he prepares the agenda with the secretary. The chairperson prepares the agenda with the secretary. He prepares the agenda. with the secretary. Right. And he also allows members to leave early. So he gives permission for members to leave, early. He gives permission for members to leave early, and he also follow up all these decisions made during the meeting. He follows up all decisions. Follow up all decisions taken and carried out. All right. So let's go to question 5.2. 5.2. 5.2. 5.2. Question 5.2. Choose the word from column B that matches the description in column A. Right. Column A, 5.21, a formal proposal for discussion. That's what we call a what? A motion. A formal proposal for a discussion. We call it a what? A motion, which is D. D, motion. A motion. Right. A decision taken. This one is 5.21. 5.21. Right. Let's go to 5.22. 5.22. A decision taken in the meeting. A decision taken in the meeting is what we call a resolution, which is F. Which is F, a resolution. Decision taken during the meeting. We call it a resolution. A resolution. A resolution. Right. Let's go to question 5.23. 5.23. Right. The meeting ends before all agenda points have been discussed. We call it what? Adjourned. Adjourned. Meaning to say it was ended before the agendas were not finished. Right. We call it a what? An adjournment. Adjourned. Adjourned. Right. Adjourned. Right. A meeting when the secretary, the chairperson, calls to end the meeting before the agendas have been completed. We call it an adjournment. Right. Let's go to 5.24. If the chairperson is present, the meeting is constituted. Right. 5.24. We call it the meeting is constituted when the chairperson is what? Is present. When the chairperson is present. Constituted. Right. And then 5.25. Someone votes on your behalf. We call it a proxy. A proxy. 5.25. That's a proxy, which is E. A proxy. When one votes on your behalf, sometimes you might be having, you could not manage to come for the meeting, and voting is supposed to be done. So you can send someone to vote on your behalf. Well, that's what you call a proxy, permission, right? You can give someone permission to vote on your behalf. We call it a proxy, right? So, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to end here. The paper constitutes 100%, 100 marks. So I hope you're going to nail it in the exam, right? So please do not forget to subscribe so that you receive notification on the revision, right? Thank you so much. Have a good day.